The hot noon sun blazes down on the quiet city park as birds scatter into the trees, and murmurs rise from a cluster of onlookers forming near the fountain, their attention drawn to a uniformed patrol officer standing rigid barking orders at an older man sitting silently on a wooden bench near the path, a worn duffel bag beside his feet and a wide-brimmed hat shielding his creased, weather-worn face from the heat. "You can't loiter here, sir. This bench is for the public, not for vagrants." The old man says nothing, just lifts his pale blue eyes with calm resignation as the officer leans forward, sneering, "Did you hear me? Move along, or I'll have to remove you myself." Tension tightens around the scene like an invisible cord, the crowd shifting uneasily as phones begin to record and whispers pass. He's not doing anything. Someone says he's just sitting there. But the officer, tall, barrel-chested young, flexes his authority with practiced disdain. "Don't play games with me. I've seen your kind thinking you can just sit around like the world owes you something." The old man still doesn't speak, only reaches slowly for his cane, the metal of it catching the light. A strange, polished gleam, unlike any common walking stick. His hand trembles slightly as he stands legs stiff and uneven back, straightening like a man preparing to face an old enemy, and the duffel bag rustles faintly, the contents hidden but strangely rigid, organized with care. "What's in the bag?" the officer barks, already assuming the worst. "You got ID papers? You homeless? Or just another vet milking sympathy?" The word vet finally draws a flicker of reaction from the old man. A quiet inhale, a tightening of his jaw, but still he doesn't retaliate. The officer snorts and reaches for his radio. "We've got a possible loitering disturbance. Male, late 60s, maybe 70. Possible intox." He doesn't finish. A sharp voice rises from the crowd. An older woman with thick glasses and a trembling hand pointed toward the man. "That's Master Sergeant Jacob Ellison. I know him. He saved my brother in Iraq." "You, how dare you?" gasps ripple outward like waves, some people turning their phones fully toward the officer, now others stepping forward, suddenly emboldened. But the officer shakes his head dismissive. "I don't care who he says he is." The old man finally speaks, his voice gravelly, but clear, deliberate like a soldier giving a field report. "I don't say I am son, I am slowly." He reaches into the side pocket of his duffel and pulls out a thick, weathered leather folder inside. Laminated documents, citations, medals. He holds up a silver coin between two fingers. "This here is a Congressional Silver Star. Got it after dragging 6 of my men out of a burning Humvee under sniper fire. Lost this leg." He knocks once on his right knee with his cane, the metal ringing hollow, but kept my unit alive. The officer hesitates, thrown his face a mix of confusion and stubborn pride. The old man continues. "I served 32 years, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Kosovo before that, retired with honors. Came back, trained the new boys. I walk this park every day. Sit here every day. Remember the ones who didn't come back, and I don't need a badge to tell me where I can sit and remember them." His voice hardens with quiet steel, and now the crowd isn't whispering. They're clapping, slow and steady like the sound of boots on concrete growing louder. "I didn't ask for pity. I asked for peace." The officer stands frozen, unsure of what to say. Hand still clutching the radio, then, from behind, another uniformed figure approaches, this time in full military dress medals glinting. Face familiar to anyone who's watched the news. General Carter Maddox, recently retired, nods respectfully to the crowd and steps between the officer and Jacob Ellison. "Is there a problem here?" he asks coolly. The patrol officer stammers, I didn't realize that you were harassing a decorated veteran." Maddox cuts him off. "Sergeant Ellison trained me in field command, saved my unit in '04. If anyone deserves to sit here, it's him." Maddox turns to Ellison, placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder. "You still come here." "Jake." The old man chuckles faintly. "Not a lot of quiet places left in the world, sir. You've earned every second of it," Maddox says before turning to the stunned crowd. "Every veteran has, we don't forget. And neither should the country they fought for." The crowd breaks into applause again, louder this time. Some with tears in their eyes, others just nodding with quiet reverence. The patrol officer, now crimson with shame, tries to apologize, but Ellison lifts a hand not unkindly. "Next time, just ask who a man is before you decide what he's worth." With that, the old soldier lowers himself gently back onto the bench cane, resting across his lap. Eyes closing briefly as the breeze stirs the leaves above. Maddox stays beside him. The crowd slowly dispersing, but the energy hangs in the air like something important just happened. Something right. And for those who watched, who saw what nearly went wrong but ended in truth, the message is clear. Honor doesn't fade with age, or disappear when the uniform is folded away. Real heroes don't ask for recognition, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve it. Moments pass in silence as Jacob Ellison sits beneath the old oak tree, the warmth of the sunlight slipping gently across his face. His breathing calm now, though his fingers still rest firmly atop the head of his cane, like the grip on a rifle long since laid to rest. General Maddox remains beside him, arms folded, his presence both protective and deferential. And slowly, one by one, members of the crowd begin returning. Not with cameras or accusations, but with quiet reverence. A young father kneels and gently urges his daughter forward. She hesitates, then steps closer to Jacob, clutching a folded American flag she had once received during a school visit. "Sir," she says in a whisper, eyes wide and awestruck, "thank you for fighting for us." Jacob opens his eyes and smiles, slow and kind. He takes the flag from her tiny hands, presses it against his heart, and nods. "You're why we did it, sweetheart. You and every kid who never had to hear gunfire in their backyard." The girl beams, runs back to her father, who places a hand on his chest and mouths, "Thank you." Then, without warning, an older man in a dusty green cap steps from the shadows, his limp almost identical to Jacob's. "Jake?" he asks, voice cracking. Jacob turns, startled, then laughs. "Harper. You son of a gun, you're still alive. Alive and limping thanks to you." Harper grins, and they embrace like two men who had walked through hell and returned with ghosts on their shoulders. "He's the one that pulled me out in Fallujah." Harper tells the onlookers now, watching in hushed awe. "I was half gone, leg shattered, couldn't see. He went back in twice, carried me out on his back." The crowd, now swelling again, gasps audibly. Even the patrol officer, still lingering at a distance, stripped of his earlier arrogance, can't hide the emotion rising in his face. Then Maddox speaks, raising his voice so all can hear. "Every day we pass heroes on the street and never know it. Why? Because they don't shout. They don't need medals on their chests to prove who they are. They carry their honor in silence, in memory, and in pain. And we as a nation too often forget. That ends today." A woman wearing a local news badge steps forward, eyes gleaming behind the camera. "Sir," she asks Jacob, "would you be willing to share your story publicly? I think people need to hear it." Jacob pauses, looking around at the faces young and old, black and white, rich and poor, gathered not to mock him now, but to listen. He sighs. I didn't sit here for recognition. I sat here to remember my boys. But if telling the story helps people see them, see all of us who wore the uniform, then, yeah, let's talk. Cameras, roll. Voices, hush. And as the sun begins its descent, golden light casting long shadows across the park, Jacob Ellison tells his story not with bitterness, but with clarity. He speaks of dusty roads and lost brothers of nights under foreign stars of missions no one ever read about, and of silence, the kind that follows you home, the kind you carry until someone finally asks. Maddox steps back, arms crossed, proud, his eyes misting. Harper stands guard beside the bench, a fellow sentinel of the past, and the patrol officer, now hat in hand, approaches once more. Sir, he says, I was wrong. I judged you before I knew anything. I let the badge go to my head. Jacob studies him a long moment, then nods. What matters is you see it now. Learn from it, that's how we change things. The officer straightens a different man now, humbled, transformed. Yes, sir, in the days that follow, Jacob's story goes viral. News stations across the country run clips. Headlines, read veteran shamed on park bench. Becomes symbol of silent strength. Schools invite him to speak children. Write letters. A local artist paints a mural near the bench. A tribute to forgotten heroes, with Jacob's face rising from camouflage shadows. A cane across his knees, a sunset behind him. The city names the bench in his honor Valor Seat. But Jacob doesn't care for the ceremony. He still comes at noon every day, sits quietly, closes his eyes and listens. Not to the crowd, but to the memories, to the names he'll never forget, to the echo of a brother's last breath. And when people sit beside him now, strangers or students or even the young officer who once tried to remove him, he smiles because finally they understand. The bench is not just a place to rest. It's a place to remember, a place to honor, a place where silence speaks louder than medals, where every scar seen or unseen is a badge of a price paid. And through Jacob's story, the city learns what it truly means to be heroic, not to boast, not to demand, but to endure, to give, and to quietly always return. And so the days pass and the bench under the oak tree becomes more than just a seat in a park. It becomes a shrine of quiet remembrance, of humility, of unspoken sacrifice. Children now bring flowers without understanding why, only that their teachers told them this man was a hero. Joggers slow their pace when passing, tipping their heads in respect. War veterans from nearby counties begin to show up too. Some in wheelchairs, some with canes, some with faded tattoos and folded flags in their hands. They come not just for Jacob Ellison, but for something deeper, a shared grief, a bond stronger than uniform or time. Jacob never asks for applause, but every time someone sits beside him with trembling lips and pain in their eyes, he listens. He listens like a brother would. He listens like no one else ever has. They still visit me in dreams. One vet whispers, "The ones I lost?" Jacob nods, hand gripping the other's shoulder, steady as a rock. "They never left you," he says. "They're just waiting for you to be okay." And then one morning, something new happens. A school bus stops at the curb near the park, and out pour dozens of students with notebooks and sketch pads, led by a young teacher named Miss Raymond. She kneels beside Jacob and asks Mr. Ellison, "I know we didn't call ahead, but my students have been studying war and memory. I told them your story. They asked if they could meet you. Jacob, surprised but touched, nods and gestures to the bench beside him, and so the children sit on the grass around his feet, silent, patient, respectful, as he speaks not of medals or battles, but of the value of courage, the meaning of loyalty, and the unbearable cost of peace. We don't fight because we want to, he says slowly. We fight because we believe the world could be better, and that no one else should have to remember that. Not just for me. For them. As the weeks turn into months, the city erects a modest plaque next to the bench. It reads, "To those who sat in silence. After serving in noise, we see you now, dedicated to Master Sergeant Jacob Ellison and all forgotten veterans." But it's not until Veterans Day that everything changes forever. The mayor himself arrives unannounced with reporters and cameras in tow, and in front of a sea of citizens gathered around the bench. He reads a letter sent from Washington, D.C., a personal commendation from the President of the United States, recognizing Jacob Ellison not only for his service but for reminding the country that heroism does not end when the uniform comes off, and that every forgotten veteran carries a story worth hearing. As the crowd cheers Jacob surrounded by fellow soldiers, tearful students, grateful parents, and even the patrol officer who now calls him mentor slowly rises to his feet, his cane clicks against the pavement as he stands tall, his face solemn, his voice steady. "I didn't sit here to be noticed," he says once more. "But if noticing means remembering the ones who didn't come home, then I'll sit here until my last breath." A silence falls, the kind that doesn't demand applause, the kind that honors, the kind that lingers in your chest long after the moment has passed. The patrol officer, now in dress blues, walks up beside Jacob, holds out something wrapped in velvet. Jacob opens it, and inside is a golden medallion engraved with a single phrase. "You kept your watch when others forgot." And in that moment, the park no longer belongs to the city. It belongs to all those who gave and were forgotten. It belongs to those who came back broken. It belongs to the ones who carried war home inside them and bore it with quiet grace. It belongs to Jacob Ellison and every man and woman like him who never asked for thanks, but finally are receiving it. Winter rolls in with a quiet grace. The oak leaves now brittle and scattered across the stone path like medals laid on the ground by invisible hands. The once lush park grows sparse, the cold wind biting through coats and scarves, but the bench beneath the oak remains occupied every day at noon. Master Sergeant Jacob Ellison, now a local legend, still arrives with the same dignity and rhythm, his cane clicking like a ticking clock against the frosted pavement, his duffel bag packed just the same, though now joined by a folded blanket, hand-knitted by a group of schoolchildren who came to hear his stories and stayed to love the man behind them. The crowd is smaller in the cold, but never gone. A mother brings her baby bundled in fleece to sit on Jacob's lap for a photo. A Vietnam vet with a chest full of silence offers a salute, tears streaking through the years in his weathered face. And sometimes young men in hoodies with no idea what to do with their pain come and sit beside Jacob, not because they understand, but because somehow they know he does. One particularly bitter afternoon, Jacob arrives early. The sun is still rising, and the sky is a pale canvas of gray and orange. He moves slower now, his limp, deeper breaths drawn longer through clenched teeth, but he makes it to the bench. And for the first time in months he finds someone already sitting there. A boy, 17, maybe, tall but thin, nervous hands twitching in his lap. Eyes red, Jacob doesn't speak at first. He just lowers himself beside him with a groan and watches the park breathe in the morning chill. "You waiting for someone?" Jacob finally asks. The boy swallows hard. "No, I didn't know where else to go." He opens a crumpled letter in his lap, military recruitment papers. "My dad served Afghanistan. Didn't come back the same. Then he didn't come back at all." Jacob studies him, sees the war sitting in the boy's chest like a stone. "You thinking of signing up?" The boy nods. "But I'm scared I'll come back like him, or not come back at all." Jacob doesn't flinch. He rests a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That fear means your heart's still working. That's a good sign. War isn't glory. It's grief wrapped in purpose. But if you carry that purpose right, if you fight for the right thing, then even pain can become something holy." The boy trembles, wipes his eyes and whispers, "Will you still be here?" "If I do." Jacob chuckles softly, coughs once into his sleeve and nods. "As long as I can breathe, son, this bench will be here. So will I." That night, the boy tells his mother he's made a choice. Not blindly, not recklessly, but with clarity. And the next morning, Jacob isn't on the bench. At first, they think maybe he's sick. But the hours pass, then the day, then the next. And on the third day, a park ranger finds a sealed letter tucked into the bench slats wrapped in a worn army flag. It's addressed simply to the people. The mayor reads it aloud at a candlelight vigil, hastily arranged that night beneath the oak, where nearly 1,000 people have gathered, many of them. Veterans, children, families, officers, strangers. The letter reads, "If you're reading this, then my watch is over. Don't mourn for me. I sat every day, not for my name, but for the names you didn't know, for the men I couldn't save, for the silence I carried so you wouldn't have to keep the bench. Keep the stories and, above all, keep remembering, because the minute we forget what it cost, we become something unworthy of what we've been given. You made an old soldier feel seen. That's more than I ever asked. With love and honor. Jacob Ellison." Tears fall freely. The mayor chokes. Even hardened Marines in the front row lower their heads. And in the silence that follows, someone plays taps from a phone, from a memory, from something deeper. The bench remains. It is never empty. Every day, someone sits, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, and each of them touches the plaque as if touching his hand. They whisper, "Thanks." They tell stories. They heal. Years later, the boy from that morning returns in full dress uniform. Silver bars on his collar. He kneels at the bench, lays down his cap, and stays there until the sun sets behind the oak tree, where once a forgotten man sat and reminded the world what it means to serve spring, arrives with quiet reverence. Not with grand fanfare, but with slow blossoms peeking through the thawed earth, and warm winds brushing gently over the weathered bench beneath the oak tree. The name Jacob Ellison is now spoken with the kind of respect reserved for those who changed something fundamental. Not through force or fame, but by sitting still long enough for the world to see what it had forgotten. The bench is now known officially as Ellison's Post, inscribed with bronze lettering beneath the plaque. The city has landscaped the area into a small memorial garden ringed with granite stones, etched with the names of local veterans, both fallen and living. Above it all, the oak tree spreads wider than before, its roots curled around history like protective arms. On the anniversary of his final letter, the city holds a public remembrance. A large crowd gathers, but it's not like the loud patriotic parades of July, it's quieter. Deeper students from the local school arrive in pressed uniforms, each carrying a single candle. The mayor gives a brief speech, but the most powerful moment belongs to the young officer, the boy who once sat on the bench with trembling hands. Now a man in crisp blues, Captain Daniel Ruiz. He stands at the podium, voice steady but filled with fire. I sat here when I was 17, lost, afraid, and unsure of what my father's sacrifice meant. I met a man who didn't need to raise his voice to show me what service looks like. He didn't just change my path. He gave me purpose. Ruiz turns and gestures to the bench. That man is not gone. He's here. Every time one of us chooses courage over comfort, duty over recognition, he's here. As silence fills the garden, a military flyover roars in the sky overhead. 4 jets in diamond formation. One peels off in the traditional missing man maneuver. The crowd gasps, some wiping tears, others simply placing hands over hearts. Then, breaking the stillness, an elderly woman walks forward from the crowd. Her silver hair is pinned back neatly, her cane tapping lightly as she approaches the bench. In her arms, she cradles a frame, a sepia-toned photo of a much younger Jacob Ellison standing in uniform beside 2 soldiers long lost to war. She lays it gently against the bench, pressing her fingers to the corner of the image before speaking. He never talked much about himself, she says, but he always left the porch light on for strangers. That's who Jacob was. He didn't want a monument. He wanted us to remember. From the back of the crowd, an unexpected figure steps forward, a tall man in civilian clothes, his posture stiff with old habits. A former general, long retired. He salutes the bench, then kneels and places a pair of dog tags on the stone beneath. I owed him my life, he says quietly. This country owed him so much more. News crews are there, but they don't shout. They just document across the nation. The footage plays under quiet music. No narration needed. Just faces, candles, tears. Honor. In the years that follow, Ellison's post becomes more than a local tribute. Veterans across the country visit it like a pilgrimage. Children study his story in schools. A foundation is built in his name, funding housing and mental health support for forgotten soldiers. And every year on the day Jacob left his letter, candles are lit across the country on public benches in parks in silence. Somewhere, a young girl hears the story and tells her class. He wasn't famous, but he made the world better, just by sitting still and being brave. The teacher smiles, writing those very words on the board, and the oak tree keeps growing. The years continue their quiet march and time. Ever, a silent sculptor carves deeper meaning into every knot of the old oak. Every crack in the bench beneath it, Ellison's post becomes sacred ground. No longer just a tribute, it becomes a living chapter of the American story. Soldiers come here before deployment, pressing trembling fingers to the plaque as if seeking strength. Some leave notes tucked beneath the bench words to brothers. They lost to ghosts they still carry. Others return from war sitting alone at dawn, letting the birds and breeze wash the blood off their memories. No one disturbs them because here silence means something. One autumn morning, Captain Daniel Ruiz returns not in uniform but in plain clothes, older now, bearing a new limp, and the kind of stare that only comes from seeing too much. He carries with him a small wooden box. He sits where Jacob once sat, rests the box on his lap, and looks toward the horizon as if waiting for someone. After a moment, he opens the box, revealing a folded letter, a military commendation, and a photo of a smiling woman in uniform. His wife, her name is Captain Marissa Lee Ruiz, killed in a peacekeeping mission overseas. His voice breaks as he speaks aloud, not to the crowd this time, but to the air beside him. I told her about this bench, Jake. About you. How you told me a soldier never dies if someone remembers their name. He closes the box, so here I am. Saying her name, saying yours, so you never fade. Unbeknownst to him, a teenager has been watching from across the path. She's here on a school trip not really paying attention until she notices Ruiz's tears and the wooden box. She walks over, unsure of what to say. Was she your mom? She asks gently, pointing to the photo. Ruiz looks up surprised by the innocence. No, he replies, managing a smile through the ache. She was everything. The girl sits beside him, hesitant but unafraid. My grandpa was in the army, too. He never talked about it. He just stared out the window a lot. Ruiz nods slowly. Sometimes silence says the most. The girl thinks, then pulls a notebook from her bag and starts writing. I'm going to tell people about this bench. She says, looking at him with fire in her eyes. About Mr. Ellison, about your wife. It's not right that people forget. Ruiz puts a hand over his heart, voice low. Then you're a soldier, too. Just a different kind. Later that week, the girl writes an article for her school paper. Then she reads it aloud at her school assembly. Then she posts it online. Then it spreads again. Thousands share it, tens of thousands. And soon, Ellison's post isn't just a local story anymore. It's a national movement. Honor benches begin appearing in cities across America, each marked with a brass plate bearing Jacob's words. Don't mourn me. Remember them. Communities. Gather. Strangers. Connect. Veterans speak. Children listen. A senator proposes a bill, the Ellison Act, a federal initiative to preserve public spaces in honor of unrecognized veterans, and provide lifelong care for those who served. It passes unanimously, a rare moment in history where every voice in Congress stands as one, and still the bench remains. Weathered now, the wood polished not by varnish but by years of hands pressed into it. Rain, snow, sun, it stands through it all. Like Jacob once did. Like all the quiet heroes still do. Then, one spring, something miraculous happens. A boy is born in the city hospital, just 3 blocks from the park. His parents, both veterans, name him Ellison, and on his first birthday, they bring him to the bench. They sit him down beneath the oak, tiny hands patting the plaque, eyes wide, as if sensing something ancient in the wood. And though he cannot speak yet, he giggles at the breeze, just as a single leaf, golden and curled, falls gently from the tree and lands in his lap, as if Jacob had never left at all. Years drift on like slow-moving clouds across a summer sky, but Ellison's post never fades. It only deepens in meaning. Generations begin to measure time, not in calendars or seasons, but in moments spent beneath the oak. Weddings are proposed near that bench, veterans receive final farewells there, their ashes scattered in the garden's quiet breeze. Musicians write ballads about it. A national poetry contest uses it as a theme, and once each year, when the spring sun hits just right, shadows fall across the plaque in a perfect line, like a salute cast in light from the heavens. The boy named Ellison now 7 visits often with his parents. He knows who he's named after, not just a man, but a legacy. He wears a tiny camouflage cap too big for his head, and he salutes the bench each time they walk past. But one day he asks something different. "Mom, do you think Mr. Jacob can hear us?" His mother kneels, brushing his dark curls aside her voice, soft but firm. "I think people like him never really leave. They just sit in the wind, like guardians." The boy smiles and places a rock on the bench painted with the words, "Thank you for being brave when the world needed it." That night, a local documentary team airs The Man on the Bench, a film chronicling Jacob's life and the ripple effect his quiet strength left behind. It plays in schools, is archived in the Library of Congress, and receives a standing ovation at a national film festival. But more than awards, it awakens something across the country. Silent veterans begin to speak. Survivors begin to heal. And the youth, for the first time in generations, begin to truly listen. Then, on what would have been Jacob Ellison's 100th birthday, the entire park transforms into something extraordinary. Not just a gathering, but a vigil of gratitude. Lanterns float above the trees, each one carrying a handwritten message, "I remember you." A choir of veterans sings taps in harmony. And Captain Daniel Ruiz, now retired gray at the temples. Wisdom in his voice takes the stage for one final speech. He doesn't speak long. He doesn't need to. This man, Ruiz, begins gesturing to the bench, taught us that the greatest service doesn't always come from action, but from presence, from simply showing up, from holding space when others are forgotten. He sat on a bench, and the world learned to stand in honor again. He pauses, then steps down and hands his service medals not to the mayor, not to a fellow officer, but to young Ellison, now sitting quietly at the front row. Eyes wide. These Ruiz says belong to the next guardian. The boy clutches them to his chest as the crowd rises in thunderous, heartfelt applause. And that night, as stars shimmer overhead and candles burn beside the bench, a new plaque is unveiled, larger now, inscribed with Jacob's full name and a simple phrase beneath. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He remembered, and in doing so reminded us who we are. And in the hush of that sacred place, with the wind curling through the oak leaves and the world holding its breath in quiet reverence, a child stands beside the bench, places his tiny hand on the wood, and whispers, "I'll watch now." And so the torch passes not with fanfare, not with parades or brass bands, but with a whisper between generations, between the living and the gone, between one boy's small hand and the grain of a weathered bench that has come to bear the memory of thousands. Little Ellison returns week after week, no longer just to visit, but to watch. He brings with him a journal, now its pages full of drawings, questions, letters to Jacob Ellison written in crooked handwriting and colored pencil. One entry reads, "Dear Mr. Jacob, today I told a boy at school he shouldn't make fun of veterans. He said they're just old men. I told him you were the bravest man I never met. I hope you heard me." Each time he leaves, he tucks a page beneath the bench like offerings to a silent guardian still on duty. Word spreads of the boy's vigil. Veterans from across the country begin writing letters to him, encouraging him, thanking him, telling him about battles they never spoke of before. "You've reminded me of who I was," one letter says. Another simply reads, "Because you sit there, I don't feel invisible anymore." Soon, an entire mailbox is built beside the bench, Letters to Ellison. People begin dropping in folded memories, regrets, confessions, and thanks. Stories once buried in trauma are now whispered into envelopes and left at the foot of that wooden post where a man once sat in silence and shook the nation awake. Then something no one expects happens. One crisp October afternoon, a stranger arrives, tall, thin, dressed in frayed civilian clothes, face shadowed by a baseball cap. He carries nothing but a worn Army-issued backpack and a look of hesitation. He sits at the far end of the bench, saying nothing. Just watches. Little Ellison approaches cautiously and offers him a cookie. The man flinches, then accepts. "You know who this bench is for?" the boy asks. The man nods slowly. "Yeah, I served with him. Back in the early days. I thought he was just a quiet old man, until one night under fire he did the impossible. Never took credit. Never wanted it. I didn't know where he went. I didn't know." His voice breaks. The boy sits beside him. Says nothing. Just sits like Jacob once did. Like he'd learned from the stories. The letters. The silence. The man wipes his eyes, digs into his bag, and pulls out a ribbon-stained piece of paper. It's an old field commendation. He stares at it for a long moment before placing it beneath the bench. "Tell your mom. Thank you," he whispers, then walks away. No name, no camera, just a shadow retreating into peace. By now, Ellison's post is featured in every history textbook. Students take virtual tours of it. Entire curriculum modules are built around it. Valor through quiet legacy of listening. The man who sat still, but still. It remains unchanged. No glass case, no velvet rope. Just a bench, a tree. A boy. Until one winter morning, after the first snowfall, dusts the city in white. A bronze statue quietly appears beside the bench. It's life-sized, subtle. Just a depiction of Jacob Ellison seated with dignity, eyes forward, cane across his knees, and the faintest, softest smile on his face, not of pride, but of peace. His left hand is open, extended, palm up, as if still listening, still waiting. Beside the statue stands young Ellison, real and wide-eyed. He stares at the sculpture for a long time before stepping forward and placing his tiny hand into the bronze one. At that moment, the wind kicks softly through the branches. A leaf falls, the sun warms the snow, and somewhere deep in the silence, the world exhales. Because somewhere, perhaps in a place we cannot name, a quiet soldier leans back into the earth and whispers, "They remember." And so the seasons continue to turn slow and reverent each year, folding itself gently into the story. Like pages in a sacred book, unseen but never unfelt. Ellison's post has long since transcended being just a bench beneath a tree. It is now a living place, a pulse in the heart of a city, a sacred hush amid the noise of the world. The bronze statue of Jacob Ellison has not tarnished it, shines not because it's polished, but because of the thousands of hands old and young that touch it with care. School children still come every month. Veterans still visit with folded flags. And now, as young Ellison approaches his 15th birthday, a new chapter is beginning to write itself. He's taller now, his face sharper, but in his eyes still burns the same steady flame. A quiet kind of knowing that most boys his age haven't yet earned. He walks to the bench now, not as a child, but as its steward. On this day, he carries a folder beneath his arm and a heavy decision in his heart. He sits, breathes, waits, as he always does. Then, one by one, people begin to join him, former students, now teachers, former soldiers, now mentors, mothers, fathers, strangers who once watched from afar and now come to be near. Finally, Captain Daniel Ruiz, older, now walking with a cane. Much like Jacob once did, arrives and takes a seat beside him. Ellison opens the folder. Inside is an official document, an acceptance letter to the National Military Academy. He turns to Ruiz, his voice steady but soft. I wasn't sure for a long time. I thought maybe I'd just write. Maybe I'd teach. Maybe I'd just sit here like Jacob. But then I realized maybe my path is to stand where he once stood. Not just here, but out there. Ruiz smiles pride, swelling behind tired eyes. You already do, son. But if that's the path you choose, you won't be walking it alone. Every one of us will be with you. Him most of all. The boy nods and places a copy of the letter beneath the statue's open bronze hand. For you, he whispers, and for every name you carried with you. That night, candlelight fills the park again, not for mourning, not even for remembrance, but for renewal, a celebration, a legacy that has leapt generations. A quiet soldier who once sat alone, now inspiring thousands to stand tall. And when the stars finally settle into the deep velvet sky and the last of the candles flicker out, Ellison remains seated alone with the wind and the oak and the weight of sacred memory. He leans forward, slightly rests his hand in Jacob's bronze palm and speaks into the dark. Your post is safe. I'll keep watch now, and somewhere beyond what eyes can see, beyond history books and folded flags and medals on silent shelves, the spirit of Jacob Ellison smiles, nods once and finally rests. His mission complete. And in the end, the story of Ellison's post becomes more than history. It becomes a heartbeat echoing through generations. What began as a single act of quiet dignity, a man sitting on a park bench, grew into a movement of remembrance, of healing, and of unity. Jacob Ellison never asked for praise. He never raised his voice. Yet, through his stillness, the world learned to stand. He reminded us that true heroes don't wear capes or demand medals. They carry invisible scars, sit in silence, and protect what matters most, even when no one is watching. And now, through the hands of a boy named after him, through the voices of those who remember, through every letter left beneath that oak, Jacob's watch continues. So, if this story moved you, if you believe in honoring those who served, in standing for the silent, in listening before judging, then be part of keeping this legacy alive. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, true-to-life stories that awaken hearts, challenge injustice, and remind us all of the quiet courage that shapes our world. One story can change how we see everything. Help us tell more of them. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next voice that deserves to be heard. This bench may be still, but its message marches on.